let's go ahead and bring this to order. We're going to start with the planning report.
Good evening. We don't have any new business for the council for this coming month. You have your report for the May 5th planning meeting. You had a few items on there, minor subdivision for UNRRA, the Scissortail subdivision phase 4. We're still ongoing work on it. And then we're obviously still working on the master street plan, the future land use plans, all our maps and everything. So, the second page, I just had the general updates on some of that. Some of the new things is we're looking at how we're going to incorporate the active transportation plan with the trails and things like that. Previously,
I don't have the report.
oh, I'm sorry. Well,
I'll send those out.
Okay, just want to make sure.
again, I don't have any new business, and basically everything that I got to talk about is stuff you've already heard about. You've already heard about the UNRRA, you've already heard about Scissortail, and we've been talking about master street plan. But the updates I have is, we're looking at incorporating the active transportation, maybe a little differently than we have in the past. Doing like an overlay with the master street plan, and we're kind of looking at some different street sections where it shows like how the sections break out. When you see like green space, sidewalk, green space, back of curb, width of street, we're kind of looking at some of those in specific areas to kind of give better clarification, like especially in the Main Street area where we're looking at like on-street parking, and we might want specific street sections for like that alley right there, where what would be available for parking. So we're kind of looking at some of those things and how we're going to incorporate that, and that's kind of a new change. So, and they look really good. I'm kind of excited for that to unfold and how it's going to work out. So.
What's the plan for this?
Right now, we're using it for storage right now. And that's where the showers are. You guys will never work on it.
Unless y'all have any specific questions or anything, again, there's no new business for y'all this month. So, thank you all.
And Will brought us the report as well. We do have it, so we'll go ahead and you want to go over your report.
Nothing of huge importance to note. We believe we did find a potential leak over on Brown. Don't know how big it is. We just saw water running down the side of the road and took a chlorine residual test. There was chlorine in the water. So we're gonna have to do some further investigation. And if you actually follow Brown all the way down to Main Street, you can see water coming from both sides of that culvert. So I suspect that single line feeding Brown all the way up probably has multiple leaks in it. So that's something that we're gonna have to investigate.
Is that on Brown Road?
Yes. Yeah, like I said, there's not any huge developments on our end. So if y'all have any questions for me, this is more of just a update. Yep.
Thanks, Will.
Next item is the removal of certain property from the fixed asset list with the fire department.
Much of that stuff's just older equipment, like the old Cascade system over in the old fire station. We no longer use it since we got a grant for a brand new one. We're gonna donate it to Clifty Fire Department over in Carroll County, or Madison County, I guess. But we no longer need it. And it's an 80-something model. So if we try to sell it, you're not gonna get anything for it. So, and we got a bunch of old radios and some the pagers that we have are obsolete. They still are on that system. Everybody's going to this new AWIN system, but they're still on the old system. So we're going to donate that stuff to them also, and some other variety of items that we no longer need or use. It's They can use it. No,
That's it,
no. And they can do whatever they want.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next item is the resolution for final payment to the Creeks Golf Course. And this is a couple of years or so ago, we did that settlement for doing repairs to the golf course itself. And those hit a certain point due to weather, it stalled and we did not take care of the rest of it. They are currently putting in, now that we've stopped using the golf course, they're putting in new irrigation system. And they wanted to be able to, which we're obligated to complete the repairs we were doing. They offered to do it themselves, and what they came up with, Justin and Daniel thought was actually a really good deal for the city. It's $39,102, and then we walk away from it. If it takes more, it's on them. It is a settlement agreement, and the only thing left to do at that point will be when the health department, ADDQ, determines what has to be done for the final cleanup as far as pumping tanks and all of that. That will have us completed, and we're waiting on the information from them on that. But this will have the golf course itself completely out from under us.
So, are they gonna be hooking up to the sewer system?
They're already hooked up to the sewer
So
system.
I don't use the step system at all?
That I don't know in the future. I don't know all their plans, but they're not gonna put houses on it. I don't know if they'd ever be able to put the RV park on it or not, or if there's something else they have planned for the future on the step system. It would require permitting from the state and a certified operator hired by them to be able to do it.
They were using septic.
They were using, a little bit of it was under septic and part of it was in our step system. And so now we've got a bigger tank, we've got a meter to be able to do the meter billing like we were talking about here a while back. And my understanding, if anything's still on the septic tank, it's the clubhouse, but I'm not sure it
That's all I know, that's all the septic.
is.
That's in Kenmore.
Everything else is kind
And
of.
then like you said, if they do tie anything to that existing drip field, that's gonna require a separate permit. That's all in there.
Nothing to do with the city.
So the trailer park, which yeah, the temporary RV that's permanent is, on our sewer.
Yeah, they've got a meter and we bill it.
Each place every week.
No, there's a meter to the tank from their main line, and we're billing based on LEUs like it was
Put that
approved.
meter in.
It was put in at our specifications, but they had to buy it.
When?
It was done, when they were in the process of transitioning over to that tank.
Because of the problem you that they had before.
Right, this is not that water meter, this is a bigger meter, and it is a, what is it called, a mag meter?
And that was this year, they got power to it not too long ago, so.
No, they probably put the last six, they wanted.
I don't know at this point if they could now that they've tied to our system. I don't know that the state would allow them to pull off to go to a step system. That would,
Yeah.
but that's between them and the state. But if they did another branch of it or something like that, they might tie it to the step system now that they've never been on it with it. But that's, I don't know. It would be expensive to set that back up because the irrigation's going through the drip fields.
It'd be a hard sell. They have to hire somebody full-time to manage that system.
So,
So, if I understand correctly, all we have left then is, once this is done, current repairs are done, cleaning of the tanks
Yeah, whatever the ADEQ says, the final closure of those two plants involves will be what we have to do at that point, whether it's pumping tanks and walk away, pumping tanks and washing them down, or if it means removing power so it can't be turned back. I don't know what they will come out and say, but whatever their closure process is what we will be responsible for.
But it, so it's that, this, and then we're done.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
It will be turned over to them, and they will get the property except for one strip of easement for a water line that we had talked about that would go up to that property up on top of the hill behind the plant, if we ever wanted to use it, but we will retain that one water line easement, and everything else gets turned over to them. The tanks go to them too. We do have to meet the shutdown requirements before we transfer them, and then we transfer them. Then they're no longer our problem.
And that's part of the tuning and everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's pretty good deal to take the 9,000.
And walk away.
Well, not just because of also if they be responsible.
Yeah.
That won't be easy to get done right away.
We're not walking away, we still have to clean the tanks.
No, but this is talking about the entire golf course. The only thing we will have left to deal with is those two treatment sites. So, next thing is the contract for the water and sewer rate study. And there is actually a book in here from McClellan that goes over a lot of that, and Andrew can probably explain that better.
Yeah, and it's UFS, so they do a lot of, rate study for all kinds of cities. A lot of these are kind of example, most of these pages are just example items and stuff that they typically do. Really the main thing that is gonna be beneficial for the city would be going from that flat rate sewer to the sewer rate being based on water usage. And so that's gonna be a big deal, especially now that we're NACA and, NACA's charging us per gallon. And so that way, with that sewer rate being tied to the water usage, you don't have a family of 8 people paying the same amount as, a retired couple. And,
It's more equitable.
More fair, yeah. Makes sense.
So these people are gonna tell us what the rate should be.
Yeah, that's how it's always done. You have to do a rate study before you do. In fact, that's state statute now. Every 5 years, we're required to have a rate study done and to follow it.
yeah, and basically it's an assessment of all of the infrastructure in the city, and then it's basically a depreciation calculation on how much of that system needs to be replaced each year to keep the system operational and up to code and everything. And that's kind of what the rates are based on. It's basically a way, and it's a mandate from the state, it's a way to make sure that a lot of these cities have rates to actually pay for their systems so that they're not falling apart.
There were some systems in poor parts of the state that they would refuse, even though they knew they needed higher rates, they would refuse to do them, and then they would wind up borrowing money for repairs, and it was much more expensive, and some of them would fall into disrepair because they didn't have the money, and because of the conditions some of them were getting in, the state mandated now that every 5 years, part of that training deal we do now that's mandated that each council member go through that training, that same law requires that every 5 years you do a study, and that a rate study, and that you abide by that rate study.
So, are they gonna give us a set figure, or is there
It'll be more of a set figure, I believe, but I'm not too programmed in current rates, but it might not be too much of a change. This will include, as far as the infrastructure, our new NACA lift station, it won't include the treatment facility, because that's gonna be decommissioned, so there'll be some things that change, and so, it'll be good to do.
And I do know last time they had a range. They had recommendation, and then if you choose to, you can do this number, or you can do this number, and it was under different circumstances that, like, the one we chose was the recommended one, and it was based on the fact that they estimated we could stay there for 5 years regardless of what the economy did, and it wouldn't make much difference. It would be sustainable. They also gave one that if you're looking at substantial infrastructure growth and you're looking at, you know your economy's going bad, like someone that has a huge manufacturing plant that's announced they're closing or something, it was a higher number, and then a lower number if you're growing extremely quickly and you know that your system's primarily going to be new and everything coming on it's going to be new. Then they had a lower number that then they qualified what should be, you know, what the different range was. And ultimately we went with the primary recommendation.
Well, one of those options should be like the state minimum, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. You mentioned the training of it. How often do you do that? Is that yearly?
It's a one-time thing.
Okay. I think the $50 fee that we get charged, is that going to be from the city?
That would be, that's the usage fee, and that would be replaced with the amount of water usage.
Okay, so the fee would be placed, I just want to make sure I understand correctly, so that would go away and be based on your usage. And then things like Scissortail, they're now ours.
Yeah,
So it's
theirs won't change, they're through
because
Rogers.
they're the Rogers, and so we tie in.
So if we watch,
Right now, when we tie to them, if we get there with water in 2 years, then they'll be on our water rate that's still on their sewer. And when we get there with our sewer, they'll come onto our sewer.
Okay. As a one more question, is there any other training that mandatory by state and council wants to do?
Not at this time that I'm aware of, but they were talking about a very, and I think it passed, a very similar law from the sewer side. And I don't know if it required the training, but because it is still a billing system and a utility, but I know that they're requiring the 5-year, survey and doing very similar to what they did with water on the cost side of it. I don't know, I don't remember hearing anything about the training side, but I'll look into it.
If you go listen to next meeting's something we need to knock out. Really not us in there.
Anything else on that one? Next item is,
Wait, just a quick question, I'm sorry. Will they, besides a report, will they show up at a council meeting and do a presentation?
they will do a presentation.
Collaborate with us at all?
I know that they will do a presentation. I don't know if the company that they're using will be there. But McClellan will do a presentation of what's recommended, what the report's
I just
finding.
wondered-
And
So
we will for sure.
you'll be interacting with them and
Yeah.
making sure that everything.
Yeah, we will for sure do a presentation. The UFS people, they have been known to send representatives, if needed. So that can be, you want somebody from them specifically with requests, but like I said, we'll be talking to them a lot, so.
Right. And once they start to engage, like how long do they stay engaged?
It was like 6 months last time, like,
6 months?
I do want to just remind everyone that there are certain subdivisions that don't have a separate irrigation meter, and so if we do go to that rate-based, that there's going to be potential issues with that.
Oh,
'Cause-
they may have to expand their box and do a second meter,
Yeah.
but it's something, or not fill their pool from there.
yeah,
You know, it's, if they have a pool.
yeah. I just wanted to put that on everyone's minds because some people will probably be upset, but it's how it's going to have to happen. So, thanks.
Next item is the one of those 3 pages I gave you. That top page is wrong on that one. It's water system.
Yeah, it says wastewater, but yeah, it's water system. The wastewater master plan is currently in the works.
So it's just water.
It's just water. They've already got a sewer master plan underway,
Yeah,
or wastewater master plan.
yeah, we plan to have the wastewater master plan draft.
But for UNMC, I gave you all 3 extra pages, and that's one of those 3 pages is that cover page. You wanna-
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, yeah, so the water master plan, you know, a lot like the sewer master plan, basically, you know, we're just evaluating the existing water system, identifying areas of, you know, high usage, future, or, you know, seeing what areas we need to do future improvements. This will also be helpful in including, you know, sizing for the possible future water tank that they're talking about. And with this data, we're also going to evaluate high system pressure, see if there's something we want to do about that, or what that cost would look like. And also, one thing Will's kind of keyed into, he's been finding a lot of air in the system, and that just occurs, it just builds up from breaks and, you know, just all kinds of reasons. But that air, it ends up in these high points, and you go to open a hydrant, you might get a bunch of air out of that high point. So, you know, evaluating those areas, see if we want to put some air valves, certain key locations. But generally, just, you know, it'll give us a better idea of how the water system's working, and we'll be able to implement measures that can help the system.
So, if Bill, no matter what, they business maintenance is subdivisions. So, that's gonna be more of a drainage on their water supply, so they're gonna do this water towers.
That water tower's probably within the next 5 years. We are. I met with the reps from the senator's office today, and there's supposed to be water grants, or water system grants and sewer system grants. Or I met with them yesterday morning, and they're sending me applications to see what we can do grant-wise, and I'm also talking to other organizations about getting funding for tower that's funding that we may not pay back, you know, grant type funding, to see what we would actually have to look at financially above and beyond. That is one thing that we're doing right now, and we're going to be, once we get these 2 studies done, the plan is to look at, or have them engaged in looking at how big it needs to be, how tall, what it's actually going to cost, so that when we see a little bit about what the funding is going to be, what the cost is going to be, where we are. That's, you know, you got to know where you are to be able to really get started, and that's all underway.
Midville recently had their updated user rates, not for who they sell to, not us yet, but we do plan that we would expect some, you know, pipeline for them on our rates from it.
And one of the things that drove ours up as high as it was last time was not having a tower, and as big as we're getting, it was during peak times, we're drawing them below the water level in the air that they're supposed to maintain. So by being able to show them that we're moving forward with the water tower, when we get about a year and a half or so, when we get into those discussions, it will help us with them to be able to negotiate to try to keep our water rates low. Because we are actually doing something to make their system work better for them.
I asked this question several years ago. We brought up the issue of water towers. Although we're talking about the water tower.
Yeah. Several years ago, we said it was a few years out, but that it was dependent on when they notified us. I've been a little more proactive about that, and I've been bringing it up to them sightline so that they understand that they don't have to come in real forcefully and start raising rates or something to force it.
I don't wanna get in a situation like this.
No, I understand. And, do what?
We do have the land.
We do have the land for it already, and, we do need to know exactly how tall it needs to be so that we can determine the cost on it. And when we get into that, knowing the size lines may determine what kind of tank, how big the tank has to be based on growth projections. There's a lot of things that goes into it.
So to do those calculations, figure out what size you need, what would be like for that.
That would be, engineers and knowing our system and.
This water certainly will help us.
Yeah, that's a part of it. That's why we're waiting on that, because it will help.
Every idea of what we need, like, roughly, do we know what it costs?
I'd have to check with Daniel. I think Daniel might give you a number.
He gave me a number a couple of years ago that was like 1.2 million or something like that, but it's been a couple of years and prices go up, and that was without knowing what size tank and the number of variables there. That was a rough estimate.
I feel like we told me like 1.5 or something.
Yeah.
That was probably.
So we, but until he has more details, we won't have a solid number.
How long does it take for them all this?
About 6 months.
So we're looking at December.
Yeah, a lot of it is on very much in the water tower. Kind of depends on what kind of limitations that we'll have put on us for usage during those peak times. It'll have to go through health department approval and stuff.
We went on over,
Yeah, I'm not gonna get in this year.
it's taking 2 years to stop light.
Well, it sounds like it's even more urgent too.
Yes.
And we're still there.
Great.
Next item is the, waiting the competitive bids to do the, drainage project down at, Fields Lane for the, that will actually ultimate, or do you have the information on it as well?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if they have to bring out a couple of extra things, I think. But basically, there were some drainage issues, erosion issues, and we had some water in our yard. I think there was a water service line that got exposed at one point. So basically, this is just work to keep water from going into the front yards and
Reduce erosion.
reduce erosion. And it'll include some.
Is it the curb?
It's the curb, it's grouted riprap before you get to the curb, it's grouted riprap, I think it is, at the culverts and
And
some
then-
things to hold things
And
together.
then south of Wagonville, right, the ditch.
Right.
And this is what I was doing.
So, were there other bids?
He actually got this when they weren't gonna have to bring in, equipment, because they were already doing another project. And he went back to them and asked what they would do now, and it went up minimally, so rather than, he didn't take it out for other bids, no. I mean, if you tell me to put it out for bids, we'll put it out for bids.
I know that we felt that Diamond C's price was pretty
I remember they've come back with better prices than some other companies when we put stuff out for bids.
And when they initially did this 2 years ago, before we tried to get a grant for it and all of that, they were doing another project and were already on site with all their equipment and stuff. And at that time, they did 71, almost 72,000. And so they're only up about 7.5. So that's why we didn't really go out for bids.
I'm okay with that one bid.
Anyone else? Next item is the resolution authorizing, work order 14 for the water system master plan. You want to go over that?
Probably did the water. Yeah, I think.
We did the water system, or water rate study, but
No, yeah, we did the master plan.
okay, then I got them out of order. Okay. Resolution for, or ordinance to amend regular meeting nights and make them 6 o'clock.
So we already passed this.
We passed a basic vote, but it doesn't change the ordinance, and so this is to clean up detail to make it official.
Okay. It's easy.
And then for updates, Daniel told me the traffic light, everything's ordered. The polls are gonna take a little longer than the rest of it, but none of it's really scheduled to take long. So that was his terminology. I don't know how long that means. Do you have any?
I didn't hear
That's
this on
one.
that, yeah.
Has the meeting of the easement activity completed?
I know we've contracted with Cassie to do that. Has she reached out yet?
She texted me today, actually, to go over the easement agreement, and then SWEPCO came out 2 weeks ago and installed the new pole. So the pole's been installed on our side, I don't know.
That's not our pole though, they're moving their, power. And so that was the power pole. The lights will be big silver poles with 2 strands of, 2 cables across that are high tensile cables.
Yeah, Cassie got in touch with me today, and she said she's gonna send me what she had, and then we'll go into discussion from there.
Okay?
I have a question about something.
Sure.
Are you gonna do, I mean, there's a lot of money going out there, are you gonna do the new budget for us?
I am working on that now, and I'll be, have committed to my, department heads to have the current one cleared out and ready for the financials for this month by the end of this week. And as soon as we get this month's financials in, we'll get those incorporated into it to see where we are and determine what all we need to do.
Yeah, like these were in the budget, right?
Yeah.
This master plan, and
Yeah.
That sounds like about 220,000.
it's a lot of money. I know we're already running into the red.
Yes.
In some
I
areas,
almost question, can we just pitch that to next year when we do the new budget?
is
Like,
what,
do we have to do the water master plan now? Like, is that really that urgent? I mean, I prefer to, like, we're already like overspending our money. I think it might be the right thing to defer that.
well, the problem,
Personally, that's my personal
the
opinion.
water master could be deferred, the sewer master and the sewer rate study and water rate study has to move forward because of the bonds.
Okay, and that's cheaper, so that feels like, okay, that could be.
I would like to be
Just
able to
ordinance.
present, because I do think that there are some areas we're over and some other areas we're under, and I would like to be able to get everything together and look at the whole thing and see where we are.
This is what you're talking about, so
Yeah.
next year.
Yeah,
I'm
I just
comfortable with
don't
that,
see
'cause
that as being an option.
The only thing I see with that is that if they're thinking about the water tower, they have to have.
And that's
water
not-
study.
The
Yeah,
water.
you said that's
tower's not-
5 years out.
Yeah.
I said it's gotta be done in the next 5 years. When we start negotiating for the water rates, that may be moved up.
I would like, I agree with you on that, I mean, I just did a rough, better numbers, but I was calculating over 220, just in this
Yeah.
resolution.
That's right here, yeah.
So,
And I feel like we're already in the red at the lowest this year.
Yes.
Let's look at the budget holistically and see what.
Well, can we maybe table this one until?
I mean,
after the-
if it once you see the budget, if that doesn't work, then you can table it.
But the budget's not coming to us until June.
I don't know if it'll be in June or if I'll be able to get it out to you sooner. When I
But
can
it's
get
also
the,
a work session.
yeah, it'll go through another work session, but you may be able to look at it and have an idea in advance of this next meeting. If you want to table it till after the budget, that's fine.
Yeah, let's,
In fact, I can just hold it till after we review the budget. That's not a problem.
Okay.
That's the, we got some more expenses than that.
I just, yeah.
Because they're going down months, and we're gonna need to plus that and make it back in there. Yeah, because they're gonna pull the data one time, and then pulling it 6 months later, they see it down 150.
No, they're not going to start the work until.
So there's some-
Well, I'm just saying, if we did one, like the cheaper one now, and we did the other.
Oh, you're saying as fair as far as comparing the rate study
I would
to the
imagine
master
they
plan.
would become
The
more.
rate study, so, yeah, rate study and the master plan, it's not gonna be the same.
Right.
So, those
Yeah,
two, those two are.
I'll just hold the water master plan until you get a chance
So they
to
can
review
pass it.
the budget.
Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds
that's
And
good.
then if you want to hold it longer, you can. If you feel comfortable with it, then we'll move forward.
We'll have more information to make that decision.
So
Okay.
can we put
That
that
sounds good.
with the budget on the June
Yeah,
second work
yes,
session?
that's what I was thinking.
Okay, that
So-
sounds,
so-
I feel a little better, because
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot.
Regarding that water system, I think part of the reason this study was done, and correct me if I'm wrong, but because of all the needs that we have, they want to know where the water pressure is or what the issue is for damaging, and that's what, I think that was where it started. But obviously now we need it for water tower, but absolutely, I think the water pressure is so high, and I think it's starting to leak. And that's why, the whole idea was to find out where we can comprehensively look at it and see how we damaging the line that we have, and that's why we have to use that.
Yeah, the water model, which include, that's part of the water master plan, involve systematic metering in certain locations, identifying those places where air is accumulating that can cause breaks. So there is benefit beyond just the water tank and the water tower.
So you're looking at it from a little different angle than the money aspect of it,
As a water
I
loss
see,
issue.
as a water loss issue, instead of.
Yeah, that's how it started at the beginning. Then, obviously, we needed for water tower also, but we're trying to figure out what's going on, why we get used to so much damage in lines.
Okay,
I think we can speak to that too, right?
Well, Andrew kind of said what I'll say, but basically the water model will show us strategic locations to put air release valves. I mean, we know air is in the system. How it gets there is kind of up for debate. But air can cause leaks, and that's what we're trying to eliminate. And that's probably it's one variable. It's not just air, but this will kind of give us a much better picture of what we're dealing with in terms of water loss.
So you're saying the air bubbles cause stress on the system to cause the leaks?
Yeah, well, if you picture a pipe, there's high points in it, and you get air accumulating at the high points, and it's preventing water from passing through it. Can either reduce the pressure in some spots, increase it in others. We're dealing with a high pressure system, so we're worried about high pressures and lines blowing out, which is what we're having with the meter boxes.
And air will cause that air hammering effect too, which can break the line.
Yeah. I mean, those pipes are moving underground, rubbing against all the rocks that we have, weakening the pipe. And I mean, we've found service lines that it looks like you took a file to it, and it's breaking from the outside.
And we knew already that there was some pressure, but we didn't know the extent of it, that's what we're trying to figure out.
So as a public works director, you would like this done sooner rather than later?
I would.
I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Your opinion. Yes, you
Yeah.
think it would be more beneficial to get it done sooner rather than
Yeah, and obviously it has benefits in regards to planning and capacity, what we can take on. But from a water loss standpoint, it would help out understanding our system that much more.
I'll look at it a little differently, than just the number one.
I have a question. Before you came on Third Street, back over here, we had a bad leak. It got in there, it was a metal pipe.
Mm.
My understanding is that whole area is metal pipe. So is the other side of the highway.
Not anymore, we replaced most of Third Street.
Okay.
Yeah, Third Street's
What
all
about-
PVC.
What about the rest of that area, whole area over there?
A lot of that's been abandoned. A lot of that was, when, if you notice that big break up on the highway, and they got that big patch, when that was done, galvanized and went down to the lake, we shut all of that off and brought plastic in from the highway up to those houses. There's been segments of it killed off and replaced. There is still some galvanized here, but we're chipping away.
What's that?
Replacing the galvanized water lines.
That'll be,
Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you. And the last thing I have was what I handed out right before the meeting. This Kim Eagle has volunteered to be on the planning commission, and I'm looking at appointing her this next meeting. And she is here tonight. If you'd like to actually meet her, here's a little information. Would you like to step up and introduce yourself?
I wasn't planning on it, but yes.
I'm Kim Eagle. I live in Hickory Hills and been living there for almost 8 years. Lived in Cave Springs almost 11 years. And I'm just interested in being part of the inner workings of our city.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anything else? Entertain a motion to adjourn. Second. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.